Cave Story Plus is an amazing story-driven 2D side-scrolling platformer. A game with memorable characters, a distinct visual style, and superb story. The story of Cave Story follows the main character, Quote, a robot who woke up in a mysterious cave in a humongous floating island with amnesia. Shortly after the simple tutorial area finishes, the story begins. A village of anthropomorphic, rabbit-like people, known as the Mimiga, are being oppressed by an evil man called the Doctor. His plan: to use the peaceful inhabitants of the cave as an army for an attack on the surface. Most of the game's narrative is delivered through lengthy dialogue boxes and cutscenes, where the player mostly plays the role of an onlooker. The story is really good. It can range from being very happy and vanilla, to very dark and depressing. One moment, the player can be returning dogs to an old lady. The next, the player can be experiencing a prison camp with workers forced to do agricultural labor. The story and the writing is one of the focal points of the game and is excellently done. Who would have thought that a game with story in the title would have such a good story? There are a few features that are exclusive to the Plus version of Cave Story. One of them is higher resolution graphics. The pixel art is superbly done. Another feature is the soundtrack. In the options menu, there are 3 available soundtracks: Original, Remastered, and New. Remastered is simply a higher quality version of the original scores, while the New option is made up of brand new music. All in all, the music in Cave Story is overrated, but pretty good. Cave Story is an extremely difficult game. This is partly due to the platforming and shooting that are subpar, but mainly due to what the game asks of the player. It's normal to play long sections of the game without save points. This is particularly true at the end of the game, if the player is attempting to get the true ending of the game. A feat that requires beating the hardest areas of the game, and then 2 boss fights in a single life. Cave Story uses an odd weapon and weapon upgrade system. Slain enemies drop hearts and crystals. Hearts replenish health, while crystals fill up an on-screen bar. Once full, the current weapon held levels up. Weapons fire differently, and generally more effectively the greater level they are. The catch to the system is, the maximum level a weapon can be is 3, and players lose crystals and thus levels when they're hit. About halfway through Cave Story, the player will receive one of 2 possible jetpacks. These change up the flow and gameplay of platforming. It's essential for clearing some areas, and makes for entertaining and puzzling platforming. Cave Story sort of incentivizes the player to play through it a second time. Most players will likely make the wrong decisions in their first playthrough, eventually ending off with the main character being left in a watery grave. As the credits roll by at the end of the game, the camera pans back to the location of the fallen character. Cave Story is so well written and has such compelling characters that the player will want to try and save the character, even if it requires a second playthrough of the entire game. In closing, Cave Story is an amazing game, well worth the time and effort to pick up and try out. The Plus Edition, what's being reviewed here, is probably the best way to play the game on Mac, PC, and Linux. The game is also available on other platforms, as well as free in some instances, so that should be kept in mind as well. My score for Cave Story Plus is 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Like, save, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Au revoir.